My own family laughed when they saw me standing outside a luxury resort. They called me a failure. My uncle told security to keep an eye on me. My cousins took pictures and mocked my clothes. But 10 minutes later, the same people who laughed at me stood frozen in shock when the resort manager walked over and handed me the master ownership documents. Because the resort they were enjoying, I owned every inch of it. What makes a person successful? Is it the car they drive, the clothes they wear, the neighborhood they live in, or is it something far less visible? Something that takes years to build while nobody is paying attention. The story you're about to hear began with humiliation, laughter, and judgment. It ended with a lesson an entire family would never forget. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Ryan. At least that's the name I'll use for this story. I grew up in a family that valued appearances above almost everything else. If you drove an expensive car, you were respected. If you wore designer clothes, people listened to what you had to say. If you lived in a large house, your opinion suddenly mattered more than everyone else's. Success in my family was measured by what people could see. For years, I was the odd one out. While my cousins showed off luxury watches and posted photos from expensive vacations, I spent most of my time working. I wasn't working a glamorous job. I wasn't the person people stopped to admire. Most of my relatives assumed I was struggling. Some openly said so. The truth was much different, but I never felt the need to explain myself. After college, I started a small online business from a cramped apartment. The first year was brutal. I worked long nights and weekends. I failed more times than I could count. Friends moved ahead in their careers, while I wondered whether I had made a terrible mistake. There were months when every dollar mattered. There were moments when quitting seemed like the smartest option. Yet every setback taught me something valuable. Every mistake forced me to improve. While my relatives were focused on looking wealthy, I became focused on building something that could create real wealth. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't impressive to outsiders. Most people never noticed. But year after year, the business grew. One client became 10. 10 became 100, revenue increased, opportunities appeared. Eventually, I expanded into investments, including real estate. The family reunion that changed everything was announced nearly a year in advance. My uncle wanted everyone to gather at one of the most exclusive beachfront resorts in the state. It was the kind of place celebrities visited, the kind of place where a single night could cost more than some families spent in a month. When I arrived, I parked my older vehicle between rows of luxury SUVs and sports cars. The moment I stepped out, I noticed the looks. My cousins exchanged smirks. One of them laughed and asked whether I had gotten lost on the way to a budget motel. Another joked that I must have been delivering food to the guests. The comments kept coming. Each one earned more laughter from the crowd. My uncle wasn't much better. He looked me up and down and shook his head. Then he quietly spoke with a member of the security staff while glancing in my direction. I later learned he had suggested they keep an eye on me because he wasn't sure I belonged there. Hearing that would have bothered me years earlier. On that day, I simply smiled. The truth was that I wasn't there primarily for the reunion. Earlier that year, through a group of investors I controlled, I had completed negotiations to acquire the resort. The transaction had been confidential until the official transfer ceremony scheduled for that afternoon. Even most employees didn't know who the new owner was. I had deliberately kept my name out of the process. As my relatives enjoyed lunch, they discussed the mysterious buyer. Some guessed it was a billionaire entrepreneur. Others imagined a famous athlete or movie star. They talked about how impressive such a person must be. Listening to them was fascinating, because they described success as if it always arrived dressed in luxury and announced itself loudly. Then, the moment arrived. The resort's general manager entered the courtyard, accompanied by several senior executives. Conversations slowed. Guests turned their attention toward the group. My relatives assumed the executives were searching for an important visitor. In a way, they were. The manager walked directly toward me. I could feel dozens of eyes following him. Then he stopped, extended his hand, and smiled. "Welcome, Mr. Carter. Everything is prepared for the ownership ceremony." For a few seconds, nobody moved. The laughter disappeared. The same cousins who had mocked my clothes stared in complete disbelief. My uncle looked as though he hadn't heard correctly. Then the manager handed me a leather folder containing the final ownership documents. The resort they were enjoying. The resort they believed I couldn't afford to visit. The resort where security had been asked to watch me. It belonged to me. The silence that followed said more than any apology ever could. Suddenly, people wanted to know how it happened. They wanted details. They wanted conversations that they had never shown interest in before. Relatives who had ignored me all morning rushed over with smiles. Some attempted to explain their behavior. Others acted as though they had always believed in me. But that wasn't what stayed with me. What stayed with me was the realization that many people judge a chapter without knowing the entire story. They see where someone is today and assume they know where that person is headed tomorrow. They confuse visibility with value. They mistake quiet progress for failure. I didn't buy that resort to prove anyone wrong. I bought it because it was a smart investment and because years of effort had created opportunities I once only dreamed about. The reveal simply exposed something that had always been there. The difference between appearance and reality. Thanks for watching. Please let us know in the comments section what you think about the story and the country you are watching from. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next video.